Welcome to this lesson. So in this lesson, we're going to be covering a very important topic of JavaScript, of programming language in general, that is objects. So it comes under object-oriented programming language. Alright, so why is this very important? That's because you can model real-world things and occurrences in JavaScript by using this particular concept called objects. So this is also more popularly known as object-oriented programming language, as I just wrote here. So what you do here is you try to solve real-world problems with a programming language. Okay, so the objects are like real-world objects, and the problems that happen to those objects are like real-world problems, and then you give solutions for that. So it's pretty much like a simulation of what's happening in the real world, which is why this is a very important topic, because a lot of projects revolve around object-oriented programming language, or OOPS. Okay, OOP or OOPS. Okay, so this is a very vast topic though, and it's beyond the scope of this particular course and project. But I'd like to teach you some basics so that you understand how the objects we'll be using in our projects work. So I'll teach the very basics so that you get an understanding of what objects are and how they're used. But OOPS as a topic, even with just JavaScript, is a very vast topic that can be created as a separate course in itself. So I won't be able to cover everything in this particular course. So let's get to it now. Alright, as I said, objects model real-world conditions. In the real world, there are two things. There are objects, and then they have properties. Right? So, for example, let's take an example of a human being. So let's take us for example. So we are human beings, as in we are one of the objects in this particular world, and each object within this category, as in each person or each human being, has a ton of properties with different values for each of those persons. For example, let's say the object is called person in here. So there's person, and this particular person has a lot of properties, like they have a name, they probably have an age, of course they have an age, and they have a height, they have a hair color, they have an eye color, and so on and so forth. So it just goes on and on. So no two persons have the exact same things for everything. So they probably talk different languages, they probably have different credentials. So these are what properties are. Okay, so this is object and these are the properties. So one object can have multiple properties. There's no end to it at all. So these properties go on and on. Also, there can be more than one person, but with different properties. Like I already told you, most human beings have different properties, but in some cases they can have the same properties as well. Alright, so to illustrate that, let me write down. So for example, let's say there's a person 1, okay, and their name is Susan, and their age is 35. Their height is around 160 centimeters, and their hair color is blonde. Okay, so these are the properties of the person 1. So let's say that's the name of that particular object. Those objects have names. Okay, so and then there's another object called person 2, and they have different properties as well. So let's say their name is Gary, their age is 40, their height is 180 centimeters, but their hair color is also blonde. So can you see here? So they have similar properties in certain cases, as in the hair color is the same, but the other properties differ. Okay, so they both have blonde hair, but every other property is different. So this is how objects are written. There is no written rule that all of the properties have to be different. There is no written rule that all of the properties have to be same. So just like in real world, some properties are the same, some differ. So sometimes all the properties are the same. All the properties that we take are the same. So there's no given rule for any of these properties or values at all. So just like in the real world. In fact, person 2, who's a different object in this particular scenario, can in fact have more properties or different properties than the person 1 object. Okay, for example, let's add an eye color. Okay, so let's add eye color for the second object. So eye color is going to be blue. Alright, so this illustrates what objects are and how their properties and values are derived. But how can we write this in JavaScript? So this illustrates how the real world is. But how can you translate this to JavaScript? You can do that by using objects, and the syntax is actually very, very easy. It's a very straightforward syntax actually. Alright, so let's remove all of this because I just wrote it down to illustrate. I hope you took down notes on everything. Alright, so let's go to our script.js and let's start. So as usual, you need to declare a variable. So variables usually hold only one value, except for in cases like arrays where it can hold more than one value. But with objects as well, you can make a variable hold multiple values or multiple properties. Okay, so multiple properties with multiple values. You've never seen it like that before, right? In arrays, it just holds multiple values. But with objects, you can actually make it hold multiple properties with multiple values. Okay, so each of those properties is going to have value. So I already illustrated who person 1 and person 2 are and what their properties are. So let's translate that to code. Okay, so this is how you can do it. So this is how you can create your object. So there's no fancy code in here. So it's pretty simple. So person 1. So this is going to be our object's name. Okay, so it's a variable which is actually an object. So how do you say it's an object? With arrays, this is how you do it. Right, so you use square brackets. With objects, you have to use flower brackets. So that's the only way to let your browser know that this particular variable is actually an object. And within that, you can specify your properties and their values. Okay, so the first property is name, and to specify the value, you have to give a colon in here and the value. That's it. So it's as simple as that. And then you can give a comma to specify that the property ends there. Okay, so this is one property, and you can include multiple properties like that with commas. Okay, so age 35, another comma, height 160, another comma, hair blonde. That's it. So for the last one, you don't have to give a comma, but you have to end it with a semicolon. So once all the properties are written and once the flower bracket is closed, you have to end your object with a semicolon, just like you do with the other variables. Okay, so now let's do it for person 2. So another object called person 2. They're also going to have a name, but the name in this case is Gary, comma, age, which is 40, height 180, hair blonde as well, and eye color blue. Okay, so that's it. I'm sorry about that. Alright, so that's it. As you can see here, you've declared the variables first, and the variables get converted to objects based on what is assigned to it. Okay, just like we did with our arrays. So you declare the array, and then with your square brackets, the browser knows that that particular variable is actually an array. So similarly, in this case, you first declare the variables. Right now, the browser does not know what this variable holds, and then it encounters these flower brackets with their properties and values inside it. So it knows that, okay, this is an object with the following properties and the following values. Okay, so this is one way of declaring your objects and assigning values to it. So now that we've created our objects, let's look at how to access those values in the next lesson. So I'll see you there. Thank you.